Imagine for a second, right, that you have just ordered a custom luxury sports car.
Oh, yeah. Like a total dream car.
Exactly. You haven't just walked onto some random lot and pointed at a vehicle. You have literally spent the last year saving up for this specific, incredibly engineered machine.
Right.
And you've picked out like the exact grain of the leather for the interior. You've chosen the specific, multi-coat custom paint job.
The works.
And you've been waiting months for the manufacturing to be finished. Like, you are tracking the delivery status online every single day.
Constantly refreshing the page.
Oh, totally. The anticipation is a physical thing.
Oh, okay.
And then right before the car is supposed to be loaded onto the transport truck to your house, the manufacturer calls you direct.
Uh-oh. That is never a good sign.
Never. And they aren't calling to confirm your delivery window. They are calling to tell you that they are completely, indefinitely halting the entire production line.
Wow.
Why? Because they've discovered that the actual engine blocks are cracked.
Oh, man.
Right. It's not a delay because of a shipping strike at some port, and it's not, a minor cosmetic scratch on the rear bumper that they can just buff out.
Right. It's fundamental.
Exactly. It is a fundamental structural breakdown at the absolute highest level of craftsmanship, and every single moving part of the operation just has to stop cold.
And, that level of catastrophic ground-up halt, that is exactly what we are looking at today in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We aren't actually talking about luxury automobiles, though. We're talking about an industry that is much more niche, but honestly, in its own way, just as complex.
And just as expensive.
Oh, absolutely. And historically, deeply significant. We're looking at the sudden and complete collapse of a massive, highly anticipated premium book project.
Right.
Specifically, the production of Brandon Sanderson's The Wheel of Time, the Eye of the World Leatherbound.
Which is just a massive deal. And, you would think a manufacturing crisis of that magnitude, something that literally freezes millions of dollars in physical product, would be detailed in some highly polished corporate press release.
You'd think so, yeah.
But the only reason we actually have the mechanical anatomy of this disaster is thanks to a detailed breakdown from an independent author and premium book collector.
Right, John Delaro's.
Exactly. And what makes his breakdown so vital for us today for this deep dive is that he possesses genuine, hard-won insider knowledge about this highly secretive, leather-bound manufacturing industry.
Yeah, he's not just a fan looking at a broken book and guessing what went wrong.
No, not at all. He has actually navigated this entire specialized supply chain to manufacture his own premium leather-bound graphic novel, Alien Agent of the Terran Imperium.
So he knows the actual nuts and bolts.
He knows the literal glue, the thread, and the brutal economics of how this art form even survives in the modern era.
And that's our mission today, really, to pull back the curtain on the extreme fragility of the luxury publishing market.
Because it is fragile.
Incredibly fragile. We're going to explore how a massive modern production, run backed by literally one of the most successful and financially solvent authors on the planet, can be brought to its knees by structural, physical defects.
Crazy to think about.
It really is. And we need to look into the hidden kind of tightrope economics of luxury books and ultimately the surprising vulnerability of these specialized global supply chains.
Yeah.
Because this whole situation just proves that even in an era of mass production, an entire industry can basically balance on a knife's edge.
Let's set the stakes for you, the listener, before we get too deep into the weeds. If you're used to just, throwing a $9 mass market paperback into your beach bag.
We're downloading an ebook in like 3 seconds.
Right, exactly.
Hey.
If that's your experience, the idea of production halt on a physical book might sound totally trivial. You just tell the printer to print more,
That's
right?
just the assumption.
But we need to establish the actual tier of product we are discussing here. These are not standard hardcovers with a glossy dust jacket.
Not even close.
These are $185 heirloom quality artifacts. And the fallout from this specific quality control crisis hasn't just delayed a single fantasy novel.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It has effectively frozen a massive chunk of the entire global capacity for this specialized art form.
And to really understand the gravity of that freeze, we first have to strip away a very persistent modern,
Which is?
the illusion of abundance. I mean, when you walk into a major chain bookstore, right, you see tens of thousands of books stacked to the ceiling.
Oh, totally. Walls of them.
Yeah. And it gives this impression that the global infrastructure to manufacture any kind of book is vast, that it's automated and totally limitless.
Like it's just a giant unending printing press somewhere.
Exact. But when you step out of commercial publishing and you enter the artisan niche of true premium leatherbound, that vast infrastructure just vanishes.
The options literally disappear.
They do. So to illustrate the sheer scale of the craftsmanship involved, let's meticulously break down the varying levels of the premium book market that our source presents.
Right, using the specific price points to kind of guide us.
Exactly.
So he lays out these very specific tiers, and it starts with what we might call entry-level premium.
Right.
And at this tier, you have something like the Robert Heinlein Virginia edition. These run around $80 to $90 a piece.
Though, to be fair, the caveat there is you typically have to purchase a full massive set to even get them at that price.
Right, which is a big commitment.
Yeah.
And visually, the source points out that these almost look like high-end tech.
Yeah, that's a perfect description.
Like, they are certainly nice, sturdy book, but they don't have a massive amount of really intricate hand-tooled detailing poured into them.
Right.
Another example sitting in this entry-level tier is Grim Oak Press's edition of Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Quest, and that one retails around $150.
And the defining characteristic of that entry-level tier is what you would call a basic print-level binder.
Okay, what does that actually mean mechanically?
Well, mechanically, they're a massive step up from a standard retail hardcover. You know, the boards are thicker, the paper is definitely better, the binding is much more secure.
Got it.
But they lack the really intense, specialized artisan touches that require legacy.
Oh.
You can actually get these $100 to $150 books manufactured at a fairly wide variety of smaller bindery facilities that do excellent, reliable work without totally exorbitant production costs.
So there's still a decent market of places that can make those.
Exactly. The real leap, the massive bottleneck, happens when you move up to the high-end art tier.
And this is the realm of publishers like Easton Press and Castalia Library.
Yes, the big leagues.
Right. At this high-end level, our source shows off an Easton Press copy of The Skies of Pern. Originally, that was a $150 book, but because it's out of print, it commands around $200 on the secondary market.
Which shows how much people value them.
Totally. And he also highlights Castalia Library's Arts of Dark and Light Epic Fantasy series, which is a $200 book right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And visually, structurally, the difference between this and the entry-level premium is just night and day.
Yeah.
You're getting pure gold foil stamping.
It's stunning.
It is. You are getting heavy, archival quality paper that is literally designed to last generations without yellowing or degrading. And crucially, you're getting incredibly difficult to execute cover bevel.
And those bevels are, they are the perfect tactile indicator of supreme quality.
Oh, absolutely.
And they are just mechanically fast.
Break that down for us. What goes into making a proper bevel on a leather-bound book?
So a bevel in high-end bookbinding involves physically shaping and sanding the heavy underlying board of the cover.
Right.
You sand it so that it tapers really smoothly at the edge. And this creates a three-dimensional, sculpted, almost architectural feel beneath the leather.
It feels amazing in your hands.
It does, but executing it requires immense precision during the wrapping phase.
Because you're wrapping genuine leather around a curve.
Exactly. If the machinery applies the leather too tightly over a deep bevel, the tension causes the leather to stretch out, thin out, and eventually just tear right at the corners.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but if it applies the leather too loosely, it fails to adhere to the sculpted slope.
And then you get, what, like wrinkles?
Wrinkles, or you get these cheap-looking air bubbles and a really spongy texture. It requires absolute perfect tension, perfect temperature for the adhesives, and perfect timing.
Which, honestly, brings up a huge question for me.
Yeah.
I was looking at the global map of facilities that can handle this specific combination.
Yeah.
You know, the deep bevels, genuine leather wrapping, archival binding at a massive commercial scale.
All right.
I honestly expected to find a whole network of massive factory cities, like an overseas manufacturing hub. But the source states there are only 2 binderies in the entire world capable of producing at this high-end scale.
Just 2?
2. That completely breaks my brain because the demand is clearly there. The source explicitly states that Brandon Sanderson has been making enormous amounts of money off these premium editions of his Mistborn series.
Oh, massive amount.
Right. And scaling up to the Wheel of Time is basically a guaranteed gold mine because of the sheer quantity of rabid fans.
For sure.
So if the demand is that insanely high, and the profit is there, why hasn't capitalism solved this? Why haven't 10 new factories popped up overnight to meet a seemingly insatiable demand for $200 luxury items?
Well, you would naturally assume that capital flows to demand, right?
Exactly.
And that a factory can just be spun up to meet it. But the barrier to entry in this specific niche is almost insurmountable for a modern startup.
Why? Is it just the cost?
It isn't just about renting a huge warehouse and buying some standard commercial printers. To compete at the level of an Easton Press or a Dragon Steel, you have to acquire massive, highly specialized legacy.
Legacy.
We are talking about machines that, in many cases, simply aren't manufactured anymore. Wait, really?
Yeah, you literally have to hunt down mid-20th century binding presses and foil stampers and entirely refurbish.
So even if you have like $50 million in venture capital, you literally cannot buy the tools new. You have to scavenge them.
Exactly. You are scavenging for parts. And even if you manage to scavenge a warehouse full of vintage Smith sewing machines and these huge hydraulic stamping presses,
Right.
the machinery is only half the battle.
Okay, what's the other half?
The real immovable bottleneck is the rare artisan skill required to actually operate those machines.
The human element.
Exactly. Applying pristine gold foil requires exact calibrations of heat, pressure, and what they call dwell time.
Dwell time.
Yeah, that's the exact fraction of a second. The heated die rests on the leather to press the foil in.
Oh, wow. So it's not just a button you press.
Not at all. And wrapping leather around complex bevels without destroying the product requires this deeply tactile understanding of how organic materials behave under stress.
Because leather is skin. It stretches. Right. And binding heavy archival paper so the book opened flat, spine never cracked, that requires masterful tension.
So you can't just hire someone off the street and train them.
No, these are completely analog process. Cannot program them into some modern touchscreen They require human intuition, timing, and a deep understanding of it is a market entirely defined and limited by human expertise.
That is wild. So the entire global supply of high-end fantasy books is basically resting on the shoulders of these two mythical locations. Who are they?
Well, the first is Castalia Library, which is located in Europe.
Okay.
They are a relatively newer player in this specific high-end manufacturing space, having really scaled up their bindery operating last year.
And this is the bindery our source, John Delaroche.
Yes, exactly. He used them for his own premium graphic novel. And because they are newer to this massive scale, you might expect some minor operational growing, but they are producing work that is structurally on par with the absolute best.
And what about the second dot on the map, the one that's actually at the center of this current disaster?
Right. The second is a facility called Bytech, located in Tennessee.
Okay.
And unlike Castalia, Bytech is a deeply entrenched institution. They have been operating for over 40 years.
Oh, wow. So they're veterans.
Absolute vet. They are the heavyweight champion of the premium binding world in North America. This is the bindery trusted by Easton Press for their collector editions.
Right.
And crucially, this is the bindery Brandon Sanderson has relied on to manufacture his massively successful Leatherbound.
So if Bytech is holding up roughly 50% of the world's high-end supply, any operational hiccup on their factory floor doesn't just delay a single delivery truck.
No, it sends shockwaves.
It sends shockwaves through the entire publishing community. And that exact shockwave hit the internet when Sanderson had to publicly hit the brake. The sheer volume of his operation basically violently collided with the fragility of this artisan process.
And the crisis did not unfold quietly in closed-door boardroom meeting. It became a very public, very urgent emergency.
You didn't try to hide it.
No, Brandon Sanderson delivered the announcement directly to his massive fan base via his weekly YouTube up. He didn't sugarcoat a single thing.
What did he say?
He completely froze everything regarding the Eye of the World Leatherbounds. I mean, he halted all ongoing printing. He halted all the binding processes.
Just stopped everything.
And most distressingly, for the thousands of fans who had already paid their $185, he halted all shipping from his warehouse.
Wow.
His company, Dragonsteel Books, just pulled the emergency brake on the entire multi-million-dollar project.
You know, the way this systemic failure was actually discovered is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it really highlights a massive logistical vulnerability.
Oh, the discovery is the craziest part.
Right, because the factory in Tennessee didn't call Dragonsteel and say, hey, our machines are misaligned, we have a huge problem.
No, they completely missed it.
The reports of the defects started flooding in from the end user. The actual fans who were lucky enough to receive the very first shipment were unboxing their highly anticipated heirlooms, opening them up, and finding catastrophic flaws.
Yeah, and they immediately took to Reddit, posting pictures and basically sounding the alarm.
But this brings up a logistical paradox that I really want to dive into with you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Why didn't Dragonsteel catch this before the books ever left their warehouse? Why rely on the customers to find the flaws? I call this the Schrodinger's cat of book publishing.
That analogy perfectly captures the sheer anxiety of luxury warehouse. Walk us through how that applies to the industry standard of what they call spot.
Okay, so if you are Dragonsteel, right, you have a warehouse filled with massive pallets of these $185 premium books.
Thousands.
Thousands. And they have arrived from Tennessee, and they are individually sealed in pristine, heavy-duty shrink wrap or protective premium packaging to keep the leather safe from moisture and dust.
Right there, perfect.
Naturally, as a company, you want to ensure your customers are getting perfect product, but the industry standard dictates that you only spot check. You pull a few random boxes, look at them, and basically just assume the rest are fine.
You absolutely do not open every single book.
Never. Because the active inspection is inherently destructive.
Exactly.
If an employee breaks the seal, unwraps the premium packaging, and physically handles the lever and the delicate foil to check for defect, they risk introducing human error.
Yep. A fingernail might scratch the leather.
The spine might get bent while they're opening it.
The foil might scuff.
Right. So by trying to verify the book is perfect, the warehouse worker might be the very person who damages it.
It's a total catch-22.
It is.
Yeah.
So until the customer actually receives it in their home and breaks the seal themselves, the book sitting on the pallet is simultaneously perfect and defective. It's Schrodinger's Leatherbound.
That is the exact dilemma. And our source confirms that this hands-off approach is the absolute gold standard across the entire publishing.
It's not just Dragonsteel being lazy.
Not at all. From massive commercial runs down to his own independent premium project, it is logistically impossible to unwrap, inspect, and perfectly rewrap 50,000 luxury books without introducing a massive rate of hand.
That makes total sense.
The entire philosophy of luxury logistics is to have as few human hands touch the unsealed product as possible before it reaches the final.
So if Dragonsteel can't realistically check the books themselves, how does quality control even function in this supply chain? You can't just operate on blind faith, can you?
Well, it operates on a highly structured system of initial approvals and deeply trusted internal oversight at the factory.
Okay, how does that?
The process begins with the publisher working incredibly closely with the bindery, to get the design exactly right. They dial in the bevels, the specific foil colors, the paperweight.
Right, all the specs.
Then the bindery does a trial run and produces a physical proof copy. The publisher physically inspects that proof, signs off on it, and from that moment forward, they rely entirely on the bindery's internal quality control team on the factory floor.
Oh, I see.
It is the bindery's job to ensure that book number 10,000 matches the approved proof exactly as well as book number 1.
And historically, Bitech has been good at this.
Unbelievably good. Sanderson's team stated that historically, Bitech's internal quality control has been unimpeachable. They have never had a problem of this magnitude.
Wow.
So Dragonsteel receives the pallet, spot checks a fraction of a percent just to ensure the shipment is actually the right book, and then ships.
But when a massive wave of undeniable defects suddenly bypasses the factory floor, gets palletized, shipped completely across the country, sits in the warehouse, and only gets discovered by angry fans on Reddit.
Yeah.
That means the internal quality control at Bitech completely fundamentally failed.
It was a total system collapse.
It wasn't just like one hydraulic press acting up. It was the entire layer of human oversight at the bindery failing to catch the press acting up.
Exactly.
And the sheer unknown scale of the problem is what necessitated the total freeze. Sanderson noted in his update that in any manufacturing run, you expect a tiny fraction of minor defects.
Sure, it's reality. Things happen.
Right. But the volume of complaints from the Reddit community was just overwhelming. He openly stated they were trying to figure out if the defect rate was twice as much as normal or 5 times.
And let me tell you, 5 times the normal defect rate is a terrifying metric when you are dealing with a product this expensive and difficult to manufacture.
I can't even imagine the panic.
Dragonsteel recognized immediately that they couldn't just, send a strongly worded email to the factory. The house was essentially on fire.
So what did they do?
According to a March 10th update provided to the Reddit, Isaac Stewart, the creative director for Dragonsteel, had to physically fly out to the Bitech bindery in Tennessee.
Which is huge. A creative director does not drop their entire schedule, get on a plane, and fly across the country to stand on a loud factory floor because a few book covers got a little scuffed in transit.
Definitely not.
You don't mobilize your executive team for a cosmetic scratch. You get on a plane because you are dealing with a structural catastrophe.
Exactly.
And we really need to look at the severe physical anatomy of these reported defects to understand why the creative director had to physically inspect the machines.
It's vital context.
Because when you break down what the Reddit community was actually documenting with photo, it paints a really grim picture of the mechanical failures happening in Tennessee.
It does. Our source carefully categorizes the specific failures that were being reported, and it's crucial to understand the mechanics of why these specific defects happen, because it illustrates the immense physical complexity of what they were trying to build.
Let's start with the cover quality problems. What were people seeing?
So, the source mentions that the Wheel of Time edition isn't just a flat piece of leather. It has an incredibly complex texture and a really intricate beveling design that frames the central cover art.
And that complexity leaves Basically zero margin for error.
Zero. We discussed bubbles earlier, but consider the mechanics of actually applying the design.
Yeah.
You are taking a piece of genuine leather, applying a specific archival adhesive, and using a massive mechanical press to force that leather into the deep grooves and slopes of the heavy cover.
Right.
The tension has to be mathematically perfect. If the press is even slightly miscalibrated, or if the operator rushes that dwell time we talked about, the leather can warp entirely as the rise.
It just pulls itself out of shape.
Exactly. Furthermore, this book features really intricate gold foil stamping. Foil stamping requires heated metal dies to press metallic foil into the leather.
And if it's off by even a little bit,
It's ruined. If the alignment of the cover boards shifts by even a fraction of a millimeter as it moves down the assembly line, the foil stamping will misalign with those bevels.
oh, so the gold isn't actually in the groove where it belongs.
Right. And the entire premium symmetrical feel of the cover is just destroyed. It's a fundamental failure to deliver the visual promise of the product.
That's heartbreaking for a collector.
It is. But the second defect reported is honestly even more distressing for someone who actually wants to interact with the book.
The glued art page. Just thinking about the sound of a customer trying to gently separate glued page makes me cringe.
It's awful.
How does a bindery accidentally glue the interior pages of a book together? That seems like a massive oversight.
It comes down to the volatile chemistry of premium printing under extreme pressure.
Okay, chemistry.
Yeah. When books are printed with vibrant, full-color interior art pages, those specific pages are completely saturated with heavy inks.
Right.
Furthermore, premium books like this often feature extensive side...
Right. That's that beautiful continuous metallic finish on the outer edges of the closed page.
Exactly. So you have the materials involved, the heavy inks, the edge foils, the specific archival adhesives used in the spine, and all of these can actually become chemically reactive
Because of the environment.
because they are subjected to the immense physical pressure of the binding. They become prone to sticking.
Oh, wow.
If the interior art pages aren't given adequate time to dry and cure, or if the pressure of the press causes that metallic side foiling to bleed slightly inward past the very edge of the paper, the materials bond together.
You just fuse.
They effectively weld themselves into a solid block.
So when the customer receives this beautiful book, opens it up to view the full color artwork they paid for, and finds the pages stuck, they naturally try to gently pull them apart.
And that's when disaster strikes.
Right. Because the ink and the foil have essentially welded the actual paper fibers together, the paper just rips.
It shreds.
The image is destroyed. They are receiving permanently damaged interior content. It completely ruins the actual reading experience of a $185 book.
Yeah. It renders the object functional. You can't even read it.
Yeah.
But as devastating as warped covers and torn art are, the third defect reported is the true critical failure.
This is the big...
This is the defect that put Isaac Stewart on the plane. Customers were post pictures showing highly visible gaps between the bind.
Okay, for those listening who haven't spent time studying the intense anatomy of bookbinding, we need to clearly define what signatures are and how a book is actually built.
Please do.
Because when you look at the top or bottom edge of a high-quality hardcover book near the spine, you don't just see a solid block of single pages glued to the back of the cover.
Right, like a cheap paperback.
Exactly. You see these little group sections, these little booklets of folded paper that are stacked together. Those folded sections are called signatures. The manufacturing process doesn't print one page at a time. It prints massive sheets of paper containing 16 or 32 pages. Giant mechanical folding machines take that massive sheet and fold it down with incredible precision into a single small booklet.
And those booklets.
Right, the signature. They are then stacked in order and fed into a Smith sewing machine, which uses industrial needles to physically sew the centers of those booklets together with thread.
It's intense machinery.
It is. And that entire block of tightly sewn signatures is what finally gets bound into the leather cover.
That is a perfect mechanical description. The signatures and the thread that binds them are the literal skeleton of the book.
Yeah.
And our source makes it emphatically clear that gaps between these binding signatures are not minor causes.
Having gaps in your binding signatures isn't like having a scratch on your luxury sports car's custom paint job. It's like finding out the actual metal chassis underneath the car is completely cracked.
That's a great point.
Right. It is a fundamental structural failure of the object itself.
That is the exact severity of the situation.
Wow.
A structural failure at the signature level means the massive, complex binding and folding machines at the Bitech facility are fundamentally misaligned.
The machines themselves are wrong.
Exact. If the paper isn't folded precisely on the millimeter, or if the Smith sewing machine's thread tension is even a little too loose, the signatures will not pull tightly together. They will gap.
And that proves it's not just a fluke.
Right. This points entirely away from a random localized fluke like an operator spilling a drop of glue in the wrong place, and it confirms a systemic machine-level crisis across the entire fact floor.
Wow.
If the signatures are gapping, the physical integrity of the book is compromised. Every single time the reader turns a page, stress is placed on that loose thread.
So it's a ticking time bomb.
It really is.
Yeah.
Eventually, the spine will fail entirely. The pages will literally detach and fall out. For an heirloom product explicitly marketed and designed to last a century, it is a total catastrophic failure of its core purpose.
And fixing a systemic machine-level error of that magnitude is incredibly expensive.
Oh, mind-boggling.
You have to halt all production, bring in engineers to recalibrate massive legacy equipment, and crucially, you likely have to throw out hundreds, maybe thousands of ruined copies that have already been printed and sewn.
It's a huge loss.
Which brings us to a really uncomfortable economic question.
Okay.
How much financial wiggle room does Brandon Sanderson actually have to absorb a blow like this? Because on the surface, to a casual observer, selling a single book for $185 sounds like a total license to print money.
It does sound like that. And this is where we need to dive deeply into the tightrope economics of luxury publishing, and specifically the direct-to-consumer model that Sanderson employs.
Let's get into the numbers.
Our source breaks down the estimated margins for this specific project, and the numbers are incredibly revealing.
He estimates that the physical production cost for one of these Wheel of Time books, given the extreme quality of the archival paper, the complex beveled cover, the genuine leather, and the gold foil, is somewhere between $75 and $100 just to manufacture.
Right, per unit.
Per unit. And they retail to the customer for $185.
I have to admit, when I first heard those numbers, I did a total double take.
A lot of people do.
A product that costs $75 to make being sold for $185. That's roughly a 50% to almost 100%.
Yep.
To an outsider, that sounds like a massive, frankly greedy profit margin. So why is the source actively praising Sanderson for keeping the prices so incredibly low?
It's a very common reaction to look at an $85 or $100 profit per unit and think it's highway robbery.
But we really need to step back and analyze standard retail economics to understand why our source is praising him so high. In the traditional world of physical retail goods, a $75 manufacturing cost for a $185 premium product is actually an incredibly tight, almost dangerously slim margin.
Walk me through that. Where does all the money go in a traditional publishing setup? Why is that considered?
Well, in traditional publishing, the physical manufacturing cost of the book is just the tip of the iceberg. Think about the entire supply.
Okay.
If a standard publisher produces a book that costs $100 to physically manufacture, they cannot simply sell it for $185.
Why not?
Because they have to pay for massive long-term warehouse. They have to pay domestic freight to move thousands of pallets across the country.
Right, shipping is huge.
Exactly. Then they have to sell it to a major distributor at a wholesale discount, which is usually 50% or more off the retail price, so the distributor can make a profit.
Wow, 50% gone.
Right. Then the distributor sells it to Barnes & Noble or independent bookstores, who also need a substantial cut just to keep their lights on.
And pay their employees.
Exactly. And crucially, traditional publishing operates on a returnable model.
What does that mean?
It means if the bookstore doesn't sell the book, they ship it back to the publisher for a full refund.
Oh, so the publisher eats that cost completely.
Completely. So to account for all those middlemen, the warehousing, the marketing, and the massive return, standard retail markup is often closer to 300% or even 400%. So a traditionally published book that costs $100 to manufacture would likely need to be priced at $300 or $400 just to maintain a healthy standard corporate profit margin.
Okay, that context completely reorients the math. How is Sanderson getting away with charging only $185? He's definitely not losing money on purpose.
No, he's brilliant at this. Sanderson is bypassing the entire traditional retail supply. He is leveraging his massive built-in audience through direct-to-consumer models, often utilizing platforms like Kickstarter or his own Dragon Steel storefront.
So no middlemen.
No middlemen at all. He doesn't need to give 50% to a distributor or worry about bookstores returning unsold stock. He knows with almost mathematical certainty that he can sell a staggering volume of these books directly to his fans.
Right.
By relying on that massive guaranteed production quantity, he achieves incredible economies of scale at the bind. He is essentially passing the savings of mass production and the complete removal of middlemen directly to the consumer to keep the retail price under $200.
That makes total sense.
Remember, the Castalia library books we discussed earlier, which are produced in much smaller traditional print runs, retail at $200. Sanderson is delivering incredible physical value for $185.
But the sheer volume that makes that 185 price point possible is the exact same mechanism that turns a mechanical error into a total financial catastrophe.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword.
Because his volume is so astronomically high, a systemic defect at the bindery doesn't mean replacing 10 or 20 books.
No.
It means replacing potentially thousands of units. And if every single replacement unit costs Dragonsteel $75 to $100 out of pocket to manufacture a second time, plus the heavy shipping costs of sending a second massive box,
that tight profit margin vanishes instantly.
it just evaporates. It becomes a massive financial liability.
It is a financial nightmare scenario. When your margins are that tight, a 10% or 20% defect rate across a massive print run can entirely wipe out the profit of the whole project.
Meaning they did all this work for nothing.
Effectively meaning Dragonsteel did all this work for free, or worse, at a severe loss. This is why the source emphasizes that Sanderson could be in massive trouble here. The direct-to-consumer volume model is a high-wire act. It works beautifully when the machines run perfectly, but it offers absolute zero safety net when the production line fails.
The silver lining here, at least for the consumer who dropped the money, is Sanderson's reputation.
Oh, absolutely.
He addressed the fans directly, and he didn't try to hide behind any kind of vague corporate speak.
He was incredibly transparent. He assured his customers, point blank, we're going to make things right, don't worry. He is widely known in the publishing industry for having excellent customer service.
Right.
If a fan submitted a ticket for a defective copy with a gapping signature or a torn page, they are going to get a replacement. Furthermore, we know that the Bitech bindery is theoretically capable of producing the book correctly.
Right, because the very first early runs that came off the presses months ago were totally pristine. Sanderson mentioned in his update that his team was physically present when those first few copies were finished, and they look spectacular.
It's like they're perfect.
They actually sent some of those flawless early copies to VIPs, including Harriet, who is the widow of Robert Jordan, the original creator of The Wheel of Time.
Right.
So we know the legacy machines can handle the complex bevel. We know the design isn't structurally impossible to build, which brings us to the biggest, most puzzling mystery of this entire deep dive.
The overarching question of why now?
Exactly. We know exactly what went wrong. The signatures failed to sew tightly, the covers warped under the presses, the art pages welded together.
Yeah.
We know the cost. It is a logistical and financial nightmare for Dragonsteel.
Yeah.
But why did a 40-year-old titan of the bindery industry, a facility that has been doing this exact kind of complex, high-end work flawlessly for decades, suddenly just forget how to manufacture a premium book?
And this is where John Del Arroz provides a truly fascinating piece of exclusive insider knowledge.
This is the real meat of it.
It is. He revealed the smoking gun that you are never going to find in an official press release or a corporate apology.
What happened?
According to his contacts within the tight-knit premium book collectors market, the main binder at Bitech, the veteran operator who was essentially running the factory floor and overseeing the most complex machinery, retired 18 months ago.
Wow. When I heard that detail, it brought everything into sharp focus. It instantly made me think of the bus factor.
Oh.
For you listening, the bus factor is a somewhat morbid thought experiment used in project management in the tech world. It basically asks how many key people in your organization would have to be hit by a bus before the entire project inevitably collapsed.
It's a scary question for a lot of companies.
Very scary. In a lot of massive multi-million-dollar operations, that number is terrifyingly low. Sometimes just one.
Yep.
Or, to use an analogy a bit more appropriate for epic fantasy, it's like the master wizard leaving the tower.
I love that analogy.
Right. You can leave the spell book behind on the desk.
Yeah.
You can leave the cauldron and the incredibly expensive magical ingredients. In this case are the multi-million-dollar binding presses, the imported genuine leather, and the archival paper.
Right.
But if the new generation of apprentices doesn't know the exact nuanced feel of casting the spell, the magic failed. They just don't have the tactile timing.
The wizard leaving the tower is a perfect analogy because we really are talking about the loss of deep generational knowledge here.
It's not just a manual you can read.
Exact. It highlights the ultimate, undeniable vulnerability of this entire premium bookmark. I mean, we are so accustomed to modern, AI-driven, flawlessly automated technology.
Totally.
If a microchip factory has an error, a computer diagnoses it instantly and recalibrates the robotic
Without human intervention.
Exact. But when an industry relies on 40-year-old legacy machinery, the human element is paramount. Calibrating a vintage Smith sewing machine or a massive hydraulic foil stamper is more akin to tuning a grand piano than programming a computer.
Oh, that's right.
It relies entirely on the tension of the thread, the ambient humidity in the factory room affecting the paper that day, and the actual ear and touch of the operator. The machines don't run themselves. They're analog instruments played by master craftsmen.
When that one master craftsman decides it's finally time to retire, pack up his tools, and go fishing, it halts 50% of the world's production capacity for luxury.
It's unbelievable.
The scale of that fragility is just staggering. One retirement brings a multi-million-dollar Brandon Sanderson project to its knees.
It truly is. Our source notes that the new generation of workers taking over the factory floor simply might not yet possess the identical tactile
They just don't have the hours logged.
Right. They undoubtedly understand the theory of how to run the bindery. They have the manuals, they've been trained, but they lack the decades of built-in muscle memory required to notice when a binding signature is gapping by a single millimeter.
Or when the pressure on a beveled cover is just slightly too high for the specific grain of leather they are using that Tuesday.
Exact. That systemic machine-level structural crisis we broke down earlier, it is the direct, unavoidable result of losing the one person who knew exactly how to list machines and calibrate them perfectly by.
So this isn't just an isolated Brandon Sanderson problem. This single retirement hasn't just paused one highly anticipated fantasy series for a few weeks. It threatens to destabilize an entire ecosystem of publishing.
Absolutely. This circles back to the global bottleneck we discussed at the very beginning.
Because there are only two places that do.
Right. Sanderson's direct-to-consumer volume is so massive that his Mistborn and Wheel of Time projects take up a huge percentage of Bytec's overall operational capacity.
Okay.
If Bytec is currently producing structurally flawed books on the Sanderson line, it means their entire factory floor is compromised. The apprentices are currently running the tower.
Oh, wow.
This systemic calibration issue could bleed directly into Easton Press and literally every other high-end publisher relying on that Tennessee facility to maintain their prestige and quality.
That's a huge ripple effect.
It is. If Bytec cannot quickly train the new generation to the exacting tactile standards of the master who left, the entire global market for premium books could face a severe, prolonged supply shock.
We have covered incredible ground today, unpacking a crisis that goes far beyond a simple shipping delay.
We really went deep.
We started by exploring the highly niche, exclusive world of $200 Leatherbound books, a market defined not by the modern illusion of massive commercial abundance, but by a severe global bottleneck consisting of exactly two capable binderies.
Right.
We looked at the Schrodinger's cat paradox of warehouse logistics, where the standard practice of unwrapping a pristine book to ensure its quality might actually be the very thing that destroys it.
We also dissected the physical anatomy of the disaster itself, moving past the obvious symptoms to understand the mechanics.
Which was fascinating.
We established that glued art pages and gaps in binding signatures aren't just cosmetic surface-level flaws. They are fundamental, machine-level structural failures rooted in chemistry and millimeter-precise thread tension.
Yeah.
And we examined the counterintuitive economics of direct consumer publishing, revealing how incredibly tight profit margins make replacing thousands of defective units a massive financial liability, despite that seemingly high $185 retail.
And finally, we arrived at the profound realization that an entire global market generating millions of dollars in revenue and capturing the imagination of thousands of fans currently rests on the shoulders of just a few skilled artisans operating legacy machinery in Tennessee.
It's wild to think about.
It really brings us back to that custom luxury sports car waiting on the factory floor. You can design the most beautiful, aerodynamically perfect chassis in the world. You can source the finest leather for the seat. But if the one veteran mechanic who knows exactly how to manually calibrate the engine block retires, the entire assembly line grinds to a halt.
It is a stark, necessary reminder of the real fragility of physical craftsmanship in an increasingly digital world.
It really is. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over today as you go about your week. We live in an era where we simply assume that everything we buy, from our phones to our cars to our furniture, is mass-produced by flawless AI and perfectly precise robotics.
We take it for granted.
We totally do. We assume the human element of error has been completely engineered out of the premium market. But this story proves that the absolute highest quality physical item, the true heirlooms we actually intend to pass down to our children, still rely entirely on sheer human intuition and tactile muscle memory. So take a look around at the premium, well-crafted physical objects in your own life. Mechanical watch, the custom hardwood furniture, the high-end musical instruments. How many of those industries are relying on one or two aging experts who know exactly how to list machines? And what happens to all those beautiful things the day those experts